Well, good morning. This Sunday, March the 7th, and I am bringing today's devotional commentary as we continue our study of the book of Exodus. The title of today's devotional is The Great Exodus and a Short-Lived Celebration. Now, Exodus 14 brings us to the shores of the Red Sea. With the cloud overshadowing Israel by day and a pillar of fire giving the people light by night, Moses led a nation of more than 1 million people to freedom. Now, following the Lord's instructions, the multitude encamped by the Red Sea. In his grief, however, Pharaoh had sent the children of Israel out of the land. But the Lord hardened the king's heart. And Moses learned soon that his conflict with Pharaoh was not yet ended. The spies had followed the movement of Israel. When they saw the encampment by the sea, they sent word to the king, who set his army in array to pursue and to overtake Moses and the people. Now, after witnessing how their God had brought Egypt to her knees, the people of Israel had departed. And we read in Exodus 14 and verse 8, and they departed with a high hand, that is, bold, triumphant, rejoicing in their freedom. Soon, however, that celebration would end with the dust of 600 chariots and soldiers seen approaching. As Pharaoh and his army drew near to Israel's encampment, we read in Exodus 14 and verse 10 that the children of Israel lifted up their eyes, and they looked, and behold, the Egyptians marched after them, and they were sore afraid, and they cried out unto the Lord. Well, we continue in Exodus 14 and verse 11, with the Red Sea before them and Egypt's army behind them. The people derided Moses, saying, because there were no graves in Egypt, hast thou taken us to die in the wilderness? And wherefore hast thou dealt thus with us, to carry us forth out of Egypt? In other words, did you bring us out of Egypt that we might die and you bury us here? You know, it's amazing, isn't it, how fickle people can be. From going with a high hand, proud and almost boasting in Exodus 14 and verse 8 to Exodus 14 and verse 12, moaning in despair and complaining with a sentiment that they would express on many occasions in the future, where they said it had been better for us to serve the Egyptians than that we should die in the wilderness. Well, Moses, however, was unshaken by the murmuring of the people and the approach of Egypt's army. And he encouraged the people, saying in Exodus 14 and verse 13, fear ye not, stand still, and see the salvation of the Lord, which he will show to you today. For the Egyptians whom you have seen today, ye shall see them again no more forever. Moses assured the people, the Lord shall fight for you, and ye shall hold your peace. Well, Moses cried out to the Lord, and the Lord then questioned Moses, wherefore criest thou unto me? Speak unto the children of Israel, that they go forward. Well, for Moses, you see, the time of prayer was over, and it was time to step out on faith and trust the Lord, who then commanded Moses, Exodus 14 and verse 16, lift up thy rod and stretch out thine hand over the sea and divide it, and the children of Israel shall go on dry ground through the midst of the sea. The Lord commanded Moses to be prepared. For when the waters of the sea opened, Pharaoh and his chariots would pursue the people into the midst of the sea, Exodus 14 and verse 17. And the Lord said, though, the purpose of all of this is that Egypt will know the Lord when the king and his army are drowned in the sea. Well, the cloud had guided Israel out of Egypt, suddenly moved rearward, and became a barrier of darkness between the people of Israel and Pharaoh's army. And that allowed Israel to pass through the waters of the Red Sea on dry land. Well, when the Egyptians pursued Israel into the midst of the sea, the Lord brought the waters in upon them, drowning them. And we read in Exodus 14, 23 all the way through 31, that Israel saw the Egyptians dead upon the seashore. And the people feared the Lord, and they believed the Lord and his servant Moses. Well, Exodus 15 takes us from that triumphant moment to now a celebration. Standing triumphantly on the far shore of the Red Sea, Moses and the children of Israel broke into a song of praise and rejoicing. And while the men were singing the refrain with Moses, verses 1 through 19, Miriam, his sister, took up a timbrel in her hand, and all the women went out after her with timbrels and with dances, singing the chorus. What a great celebration! Surely one that should have continued for days and weeks. However, that was not to be the case. 3 days into the wilderness, after that triumphant moment of watching the bodies of the Egyptians wash up on the seashores, 3 days after that, when Israel found no water, we read in Exodus 15 and verse 24 that they murmured against Moses, saying, "What shall we drink?" You see, there would be a sinful pattern of murmuring that will follow Israel's journey through the wilderness for the next 40 years. And it will be a sorrow not only to Moses, but to the Lord. Moses cried to the Lord, Exodus 15 and verse 25, and the Lord assured him he would heal the bitter waters and make them pure, and testing and proving the faith of the people. Well, what was the lesson Israel was to take from the bitter, poisonous waters? Well, it was this. If Israel would hear and obey the words of the Lord, walk in righteousness, hear and heed his commandments, the Lord would spare Israel from the diseases that afflicted the Egyptians. And he promised Israel, I am the Lord that healeth thee. And God bless you, my friend, as we go into this day. Sunday is the day of worship for us. I pray that you'll take some of the words that we've shared with you today, how easy it is to go from a triumphant moment and then to become a fickle, murmuring people. Won't you realize that murmuring and gossip, it does no good for anyone. It discourages, it defeats, and it hurts the work of the Lord. Let's be faithful to the Lord today. And may our celebration be in the triumph of his death, burial, and resurrection from the dead. God bless. Bye-bye.